I am very, very appreciative and honored to be here, and I will try not to be too long to keep you from your booze. I was raised in upstate New York by a mother who was a nurse and a father who was a pharmacist. So naturally, I wanted to be a scientist before I ever knew about acting or the business of entertainment. I was natural, clearly, because my dad, by the age of 6, was allowing me to make medicine for his customers by putting little plastic caplets in bottles. Sadly, it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I pathetically realized that I was really just taking flour and filling some plastic, and he would then take those bottles and hide them on a shelf so I would think he actually sold them to sick people. But that was not what swayed me from my scientific pursuits. When I was 7, I got to play a scientist in the school play, and I quickly realized that playing a scientist was a lot more interesting, took a lot less formal schooling, and involved a lot less math, and a much quicker route to instant gratification from acknowledgement of your work. So when I wasn't helping my father make medicine for sick people, he made me dust the shelves, which really sucked, and I realized later that that actually was a metaphor and that all businesses would eventually have their own necessary kind of dirty work. But oddly, the medical profession and entertainment worlds would become two areas that would grow and intertwine throughout my life. Yes, I watched my dad deal with home health care through his medical supply store and pharmacy, and I watched my mom affect our community through her nursing, enterostomal therapy, and later her home health care aid medication education. But it was my own illness as a teenager that fused these two areas for my life. When I was 14, I was diagnosed with something called ITP, idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura. What do you guys do, by the way, when you're writing these medical papers and speeches in terms of spell check? I could not find one program on my very expensive computer that identified any of these three words. Idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura. I'm sure I don't have to tell many of you what that means, but it's a blood disorder where your antibodies start eating your platelets. So I was left with a very low platelet count. Mine tended to hover around 10 or 20,000. So all major physical activity was off limits. And while this is not what kept the world from me becoming the next great Jewish football player, it did leave me with a very frustrating situation of having only one outlet as a teenager. Well, two, if you count girls, but that was more of a fruitless pursuit than an outlet. I was left with a very demanding yet very low-impact sport of the theater. 3 days a week, I spent 4 or 5 hours a day trying different treatments to boost my blood levels. Gamma globulins, steroids, chemotherapy, and then I would quickly rush back as fast as I could to make it to school in time for play practice. Every day, every morning, when I would go to get my blood checked, my amazing and thoughtful pediatric hematologist would, in addition to filling what seemed like an endless amount of test tubes, take a few drops of blood and put them on a few slides and have me bring them up to him. Dr. Dubansky would then put them under a microscope and have us sit on either side, where he would then let me look at my deficient cells, not only giving me an opportunity to ask questions, but involving me in the process of and empowering me by demystifying an otherwise very scary time and disabling disease. But I will say, what always bothered me, what always really kind of pissed me off was that word idiopathic. Even as a teenager, I saw what a sham that labeling was, right? I mean, learned and highly schooled men and women using this large and daunting Latin word to throw you off this disease when all idiopathic really means is they don't know. How typically doctorly arrogant to purposely cloak their lack of knowledge in this big and scary sounding word, a word that most people would be far too intimidated to approach, much less dissect. They took an adjective and they made it into a noun. I remember thinking, geez, I didn't know they taught plastic surgery on language in medical school. Anyway, whatever, I had a life to live, onward. Jumping to many years, Broadway plays and films later, and my brother and I were on the set of our film Puncture. We had spent a couple of years developing this movie, true story, about two lawyers who were helping a needle manufacturer get his retractable spring action needle into the marketplace. Apparently the GPOs and the medical supply companies that had made a other needle didn't like a new, better product coming into the marketplace, so they decided to do everything they could to stop it. Anyway, throughout the 2 years of research and development, two things happened. One, we met with and we interviewed countless doctors, nurses, technicians, and pharmaceutical companies. And two, our father got cancer, lymphoma. By the time we were shooting my film, my brother and I were alternating between taking care of our movie and going back home to help take care of our father. Now let's talk about a movie set. My brother and I used to say when we were on the set of Puncture that making a movie is like going to war with a carnival. The carnival workers are your soldiers, by the way. Crazy, intelligent, educated artists whose own individual and monolithic point of view on any given scenario has to work in concert with a multitude of variables, with military-like precision, in achieving your common objective, making a great movie. The director's job is to attack this task using his or her generals, who in this case are your lead designers, right? Production and art designers, cinematographer who we'll call a shot designer or a camera artist, gaffers, which are lighting designers, all people who have traveled a very long way in life, who have become learned experts in their fields, specialists, all with their own team, or in our case, if you don't have very much money, a couple of people, depending on the size of the film, that works underneath them, all which must operate with decisive military-like precision against our common enemy, which is time. Occasionally, it is an over-pampered actress and who's entitled and won't leave her trailer until you've removed the lunch buffet of all bready carbohydrates and fatty foods, but that too is in fact about time, right? We have a schedule. The sun sets, the money runs out. Each one of these time-tracking elements potentially lessening our ability for our individual artistic generals to work with their soldiers towards completing the goal of our super objective, making a great movie. And if that movie doesn't work out as a whole, it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter how great that artist's knowledge was or how well they ran their department. I doubt very many of you have been to the movies, and whether it was John Carter from Mars, Ishtar, or anything that Katherine Heigl's been in the last 5 years and said, geez, that film really sucked. I can't believe we wasted $25 and a babysitter on that piece of crap. But you know what? I think that costume designer probably came in under budget, on time. And if any of you have left the theater when said that, please find me in the cocktail hour because we really do need more people like you in the movie business. Anyway, this is the basic construct and dynamic of a movie set. And while the people in my business do not come close to, on any level, the importance of what the people in the medical industry do, the parallel of these parallel of the commonality of these two worlds I was oscillating between while making Puncture was definitely not lost on me. I watched as the various teams of doctors from various hospitals with various disciplines and specialties all attacked the problem of my father's form of lymphoma, each with their own well-earned expertise, each with their own team of soldiers and tools, each trying to use their necessary monolithic point of view amongst a multitude of variables with military-like precision to achieve the common objective of battling their main enemy, time. And my mother, a nurse, for over 50 years, who would not stop asking questions, thank God. On one of those weeks when we started out in the hospital and ended up back on the set of our movie, I believe it was one of the doctors from MD Anderson who said to us, you know, medicine's really 60% science and 40% art. Back on the set, I watched my own team of artistic scientists go into triage for the gigantic problem that was unfolding before my very eyes. In film production, we have what's called a call sheet that goes out to everyone every day, letting them know where and when they should show up and what time the next day. Sometimes, due to a shifting variable of some sort, a call sheet goes out, and then a second call sheet goes out, moving that time. Well, someone from the makeup department did not get the second call sheet and was not ready to make up our actors. Sounds small, seems trivial, but has very, very large ramifications. I sat there watching everyone run to their corners, cloaked in righteous indignation about how their systems held true, it wasn't their fault, blah, 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 as I watched the reliable enemy of time threaten to swoop down and steal shots away from my movie, threatening to make it worse, not to allow me to achieve my objective of making a great film. Things like this happen due to a breakdown in systems, communication, coordination of care, and lack of humility. I had this strange epiphany about my time back in the pediatric hematology unit and that really annoying word, idiopathic. I realized that I was wrong. I had misjudged the labeler of my disease. You see, calling something idiopathic, so it was right there, The first word that you see every time my disease was mentioned was a good thing, a smart thing, a courageous thing. You see, by insisting that we communicate around the label "we don't know," we remind ourselves, we remind knowledgeable and accomplished people to approach a problem with humility, regardless of who forced what variable to change, regardless of everyone's unique and all-important specialty. We are all subservient to the greater needs of the unknown whole. Now, there are many tools towards helping us achieve this objective in both our professions. As I said, we have call sheets to let everybody know where and when to show up. There are storyboards and shot lists that can let everybody know what the action is, the being shot of the day. If you have enough money, you can make animation and pre-visualization tools. In the medical industry, you have charts, whiteboards to put up x-rays, MRIs, way high so we can all see. Electronic medical records so we can all share information and eventually get on the same page. I would go back to my dad's hospital with a newfound comfortability and understanding. I started to look closer as my father's illness got worse, and we went on the more and more specialized road of experimental protocols. Now, I want to be very clear about something. My father had amazing doctors and equally amazing nurses. However, I was amazed and horrified on more than one occasion when all of these systems of communication and clarity failed, as he was repeatedly given either the wrong medication or the wrong dosage of a medication. I laughed with horror watching my dad, fuzzy from chemo, say, I'm sorry, but 30 milligrams of blah, blah, blah is actually a blue octagon pill, not a pink oval, unless, of course, it's a generic, in which case it would be a yellow circle. The nurse, of course, would argue back and say, Alan, this is what it says you're supposed to take in the chart. And my dad would say, I don't give a crap about what it says in the chart. I'm a pharmacist. I know my meds. I would watch my mom, a nurse for over 50 years, help. And by help, I mean challenge the doctors and nurses, repeatedly showing up at rounds almost every morning, forcing them all to communicate directly to each other, so that when one doctor from a new hospital didn't carry over some of the important information discovered by a specialist from another hospital, my mom is there to detail the information herself, forcing everyone to look at each other and literally write the information down on the same page. My dad's a pharmacist. My mom's a nurse. I can read a chart, and I am completely demystified by large Latin words, medical jargon. My sister is in medical research, and my brother is just smart and neurotically detailed enough to not miss a beat. So we are lucky. What's everybody else supposed to do? I realize that this is how you have to act now. So much so that when my mom went into the hospital 2 months ago for a broken arm, I sat with her as we forced the doctor to repeat, like Rain Man, the agreed upon treatment, both in the hospital and the schedule for home health care. And despite all of this, I had to sit there and help my mom argue with a discharge nurse who tried to call her a cab when I stepped out for lunch, because the paperwork that she had differed from the paperwork that the doctor filed, and the hospital decided to go with what seemed like the easier, cheaper option. By the way, rushing her out of the hospital 2 days earlier was no small part in missing the complications from surgery that let her go back to the hospital 2 days later with a paralyzed diaphragm. These things happen due to a breakdown in systems, communication, coordination of care, and lack of humility. About a year and a half ago, on September 15th, our film Puncture premiered. A day after our father passed away from his bout with lymphoma. Now, I don't believe that things happen for a reason. But I do believe that you can make a reason out of things that happen. So it is important to me to let you know how much I care and how committed I am to doing whatever I can in my small, non-medical professional way to giving a better insight into the world of what you do, and perhaps helping to create a platform via whatever tools either of us can share towards creating a better world of systems and communication. It is important to me to let you know that I appreciate, on behalf of myself On behalf of the many kids that I was in that pediatric hematology unit with, on behalf of the many hospitals my mother worked at, and the doctors and the customers my father worked for, on behalf of the hospitals he was in and the hospitals that continue to take care of her, that I appreciate what you do and your incredible commitment to do it. I realize what's asked of you every day, and it's amazing. I realize that time is an enemy. Time to make a decision before it's too late. Time to finish up rounds before a very important surgery. I realize that compensation of your time is an issue, and it should be. It's important. You can't pretend that finances aren't a part of the problem and therefore a part of the solution any more than I can pretend that if I work my crew of 100 people over 12 hours, they're going to go in overtime. And then I might be forced to cut something that I really care about in my film due to budgetary constraints. But you also cannot pretend that there isn't 200,000 accidental preventable deaths in the US every year. Deaths from a misdosage of medication, deaths from an oversight, deaths from human error, but mostly deaths from lack of systems that inspire true communication, coordination of care, and humility. You know, that doctor who said to me that medicine was 60% science and 40% art, to me missed a piece of the equation: communication. I feel like it's more 33, 33, 33. 33 science, 33 art, and 33 communication. So, tomorrow, when we all go into our specific challenges and when you break off into your specific groups, I have a request. I ask that you bring your expertise to the table with an idiopathic mindset towards finding a non-idiopathic solution. I ask that you speak with strength and certainty. I ask that you listen with openness and clarity. And I ask that you challenge with confidence and humility. Because simply put, you are here because this needs to happen. We have a goal of leaving your individual sessions with a holistic diagnosis that can be turned into ongoing systems that can be transported beyond the beautiful walls of this wonderful castle by the sea that we are lucky enough to be hosted at during this exercise. Because the world needs it. People need it. And you, all together, actually have everything you need to make it so. Thanks. See you at the bar.